Hi everyone. Sorry, I'm really slow because I'm not the best Zoom user, but I'm getting to the okay, this one. Okay. Can you see my presentation? Hopefully. Awesome. Okay. I can only see Lisa, so thank you for your thumbs up. So hi everyone. I'm Selene. I'm part of the Climate-KIC Alumni board, and within Fernanda and Orestes, we are the ones who are trying to reactivate our community. Since you are all here, I guess most of you knows about the alumni community, the climate alumni community, and in more in general about the climate kick. I believe really the most of you at least took part of one of the Climate Kick programs. But if you don't know it, EIT and EIT alumni is a huge family, which is it takes care of all the innovation and technology development of the European Union and more. We have the EIT alumni from the digital side, from the health side, energy, and then we have raw materials, food, and also smart mobility. As Climate Kick alumni community, we want to build and improve our community and our movement, which is open for every participant of the Climate Kick activities, like for example the journey, the CIL program, so the Climate Innovation Leadership Program, the ones who participate in the past to the Master Label Program, like before 2019, or all the entrepreneurial activities like Climate Launchpad or Accelerator, the Climate Accelerator Program, and so on. Our main goal is to empower climate innovators to take action. Like Vanessa and Melissa did, for example, during the COP26 or for this event, the community just want to help innovators and climate change makers to actively act against climate change. And also, we are definitely driven by bottom-up initiatives. What can you do as a member? You can basically propose and do whatever you like. For example, organize events like this one or attend events, and the board and the EIT in general will support you with all the stuff that you need to organize an event. You can share your like your job position open, or you can also find a job in our network. You can meet members from all the different projects and try to find synergies within the community. And of course, you can just be creative and propose whatever you like. To do that, you can just keep in touch with us. You can find here our email addresses. You can write it down right now. Or otherwise, you can just write us on our Slack channel or by LinkedIn. It's fine. And if you want to be an active member, like a volunteer, you can join our alumni ambassadors. For example, I saw here Javier and Emanuela. And also Vanessa and Melissa are active members. What an ambassador does is just to help the board to spread events and to create new activities for the whole community. You can help us with our social media, and yeah, we are just open to every ideas from the community. If you want to keep in touch with us, you can use our Slack channel. Hopefully all of you has the link, but I will share it with you in this chat, so you can find it there as well. We have a LinkedIn group which is really active, and you can just share professional stuff, articles, events, and news. And then we have this super innovative tool which is Acceptive Cognitive City, which is like a work matchmaking environment, which is super complex word, just to say that you can find and match people that are interested in your same topic, and you can just connect with them, and so develop new projects or improve your ones. Okay, so that's all. This is actually the QR code for the Climate-KIC, the Slack channel. And if you want to keep in touch with us, just text us, and we're always open to listen to you and work together. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Selene. And next, at the end, we will have time also to talk to you, the ones who have more questions. And now it's the time to introduce our special guest speaker for today. That is Lita Weissbrod, and she's in Germany, and she defines herself as a business and academia hybrid. She will tell you more about her background as well. But I just wanted to mention that we are very happy that she's also one of us. She's a Climate-KIC alumni. She did her PhD studies in the Imperial College of London, and she was supported by Climate-KIC, so she's also one member of our community. So yeah, like hands on for her, maybe with the symbol, and the floor is yours.
Okay, great. Thank you, Vanessa, and thank you for the introduction. Selena, this is I'm engaging with the climate community, and I look forward to do more of it. And I noted down your email, so thank you for sharing. Just as a heads up, so the people who consider themselves pro in the area, this is going to be very boring for you. So I am definitely giving it an introductory, beginner level talk today. So I'm not coming up with circularity mapping canvases mapped next to each other and saying XYZ value networks are created and this makes for a circular business model because of this. So if you're looking for that kind of content in this talk, I can't give it to you today because I haven't prepared the slide accordingly. So it is going to be a high-level introductory talk, just as some framing, but we can definitely go into more detail and depth in the discussion. So I'm going to start sharing my screen now. And Vanessa, if you could let me know if you just see the main screen or if you see the side screens as well. Side screens? No, just the main screen.
Oh, fine.
Excellent. So that's me in 1997. And so I started my work at the tail end of the value chain. So I started off in Germany as a waste manager, and this is me putting acid from a incineration plant into a very big lorry. And I had a sports career at that point in time and realized that's not going to work out, and then decided I focus now on sustainability and immigrated to the UK and did my studies there, always focused on sustainability and business, and also worked always in the field. And the UK was my home base. I also hold the UK citizenship. And I had between 3 and 6 months stays in a couple of Chinese cities, and also at the United Nations Environment Programme in Paris. And I have since 2006 always focused on sustainable innovation practice. And from 2012, I also got more engaged in academia when I started in December 2012 my PhD. And these days, I'm completely focused on what it means at the business level to experiment in order to operationalize the circular economy. And I do that through action research, but also through university teaching. And I'm currently a postdoc researcher at the Leuphana University in Lüneburg. I do that 50% of my time. And I'm also Director of Sustainable Circularity at an innovation agency called Indeed Innovation in Hamburg. And actually after Easter, I'm going to take on a professorship, but it's pretty much going to be the same time split. And I'm a Climate-KIC alumni. I think we were the first year who did the journey, if I'm not mistaken, in 2013. And I did that in London, Berlin, and Paris. And back then, very luckily, Climate-KIC still gave out material and research allowances for people who did their PhD. So my PhD was fully funded by the UK government, but Climate-KIC said, oh, we really like this research this woman is doing. And so over 3.5 years, she is going to get a material and research allowance. So I could do really good research training courses. I do qualitative research, doing interview transcripts. It was incredibly beneficial to have that funding available. And the final link to Climate-KIC is Richard Templer, who used to be the director of Climate-KIC UK, was one of the examiners of my PhD thesis. And I know from Vanessa, a few people here also in the research field, and it's an interesting system in the UK because your PhD supervisor is not allowed in the room. And so you only have your examination with people who are external to your research. And Richard had the role of the practitioner mind and examining what I've done in my monothesis based from a lens of practice applicability. But now I'm starting very high level. So just don't leave me when I'm coming to the next slide. So for me, I'm always talking about sustainability as a nested circle concept, which means absolute boundaries when it comes to being a business. So obviously, you know this from the climate perspective, and the close link to that is obviously the materials and resources. So, you know, many people use the 3 overlapping circles when it comes to articulating how they think about sustainability. And for me, sustainability and sustainable development, both from a circularity and from a sustainability perspective, is always connected to absolute boundaries. So just to be really clear on that. And when it comes to circular economy, for me, that is a continuation of the sustainable development narrative. And this is from a great paper from 2017 from 2 other fellow Climate-KIC alumni, Fenna Blomsma and Geraldine Brennan. One is also now in Hamburg, that's Fenna. And Geraldine is now the circularity lead for the Institute of Manufacturing in Ireland. And what they did in 2017, they said, oh, there's this thing, circular economy, it's bubbling up, and how are we going to talk about it? And at that point, it was still, it is the circular economy. There is an absolute state. And what they did said no, it is an umbrella concept, and basically looked at all the different manifestation of circular economy. And I absolutely love this paper, and it's open access, and the link is down there. You can take a screenshot. And what they basically said, so what you see here in front of me, everything green is the material flow, everything blue is the technical flow, and the purple one is a mixture of the 2. And many of you probably know in the top row, the second from the left, that is the cradle to cradle concept, where you've got it's about a very clear closing the environmental loop, closing the technical loop. And if you ever, I actually taught a course with Michael Braungart last winter semester, where we talked about cradle to cradle entrepreneurship. We wrote a course together. And what is, for example, not visible when it comes to the articulation of the concept, but what he is very clear about when it comes to what it means to implement this through entrepreneurial activities, that you can never have just the green environmental circle and then the blue technical circle, but it's always both. It's always connected. And then in the second row on the fully left-hand side, you see the Alan MacArthur conceptualization of the circular economy, which is probably also another one that many of you are familiar with. But all of these, just to be really clear, circular economy is an approach. So this is, for me, the absolute starting point. There is not the circular economy that you are going to have as a goal. There's not an end state, a fixed end state, and you set up your business and there are certain steps that you get there in order to achieve this end goal, because the end goal is going to be completely dependent on how you interpret what it means to incorporate circular economy in the business practices, be it at a large corporation or as a small startup. So that's just the background where I'm coming from. And you notice that I use the word sustainable circularity, because also you saw my job title is Director of Sustainable Circularity, for example. And I asked for that, I created that, because in the dialogue especially when you have a dialogue with existing businesses that are trying to engage in the circularity discourse and using it as a way to restructure and reorient their innovation processes. Initially, it's often the misconception that circularity and circular economy is just about material and resources, and that the social element, especially the people element, is more it's a bit disconnected from it. And for me, it's absolutely intertwined. That because of that, I always use the term sustainable circularity, and it's just a very simple way of talking about it. How I talk about it: closing resource loops to serve all people. So that's where I'm coming from, what I mean. And now it's going to be a little bit of a break in my narrative, because Vanessa said that there are definitely going to be some people in the audience who've got absolutely no business background. So just as a little bit of a reminder, I'm going now to just briefly talk about what I mean when it comes to business model. And also what it means when it comes to entrepreneurial and innovation activities and business model innovation. So earlier on, there was the phrase buzzword when it came to what is circular entrepreneurship. That's the same when it comes to business model. So it means many different things to many different people. And I really like that. You know, what does it mean? What does business model mean? When you say, well, it's a rationale behind how a business does the value proposition, value creation, value delivery, and value capture. And there are definitely core key questions that are associated with these 4 elements. And those 4 elements are always linked. And that's when you ask yourself as an entrepreneur or as an innovator in business, how do we go about our core business? And I know that many of you know the business model canvas. So I just plopped that on here. So the 4 boxes, the 4 categories you see there, same colors on the business model canvas. And what is the absolute important takeaway here is the value proposition at the heart of your business. That is the absolute where it comes down to when you embed circularity practices. And then you have got the how, value creation and value delivery, and value capture is how you make your money. And obviously the strategizer tools, they are all completely freely available on the website. You have to type in your email address and you can download all these business tools. And we use them when we teach circular entrepreneurship or the cradle to cradle entrepreneurship tools. We use lots of the strategizer tools because they're very useful. Now, but what distinguishes a sustainable business model? And I know some of you will go, we are talking about circular business model, aren't we, Ilka? Well, just bear with me for a second. So if you've got the 4 categories, you've got the value proposition, you know, that provides measurable, and that's important, ecological and also social value together with the making money element. And in different ways of looking at sustainability than the nested perspective I showed you earlier, there is often the expectation, and I haven't signed up to this and I do not condone this, that if you have got environmental focus in the value proposition, that automatically means that your value creation when it comes to social needs to be a trade-off, and specifically to the economic element as well. This is not something I believe or I have seen in my research. This is often an argument brought by people who are very keen to keep the linear economy going. Then we have got the value creation. So this is, you know, who is going to make the stuff? Who are you going to work with to create your value proposition? And here it says, you know, involve suppliers that take responsibility towards stakeholders. So this means, for example, how are the labor practices in the supply chain and suppliers you're working with? So what's happening on the transport side? Value delivery is where I'm going to talk more about in conjunction with value proposition, because that is about how you actually engage your customers with your value proposition. And the value capture, yeah, that's to reflect an appropriate distribution of economic costs and benefits about actors. So for example, when it comes to a sustainable business model, that is fantastic when it comes to, we have got the highest social standards in how we do things. We have got the highest environmental standards. If that means you're producing a good that is completely above the price point of anything else on the market, that means that you're shutting out a large element of society to actually be able to afford your product. And that is, for example, also in an implication on a sustainability level, because that is not conducive to having an inclusive society. So that's, for example, what it means when it comes to value capture and having that in as part of a sustainable business model. And now making the link to what distinguishes actual circular business model innovation, and this is a circularity aspect. And I would be interested because so I do a lot of work with an academic called Nancy Bocken. She was a postdoc in Cambridge, and where my research group was led from. So we did a lot of work together while I was doing my PhD, and since then. And she is now has got a project going, funded also by the European Union, which is called CircularX. And she does a lot of circular business model stuff. And this is something based on something that we worked together on a master's thesis in 2021. And at the startup level, circular business model innovation means basically when you come up with your idea, you've got a clarity on certain circular practices that can be often the starting point as our strategies. So it's refurbishment, reusing, design for disassembly, all that kind of stuff. And in large corporation, that means in the first case, often readjusting your goal in terms of when it comes to how you want to create value. So for example, that means when I did an 18-month case study during my PhD, a clothing manufacturer had only 2% of all the clothing after they were sold, the value was recovered, and the rest of it went basically to landfill, and they knew that. And they wanted to have 50% value recovered through different engagement with the consumers. They did not quite succeed, but it was a really interesting project. But this was basically a very clear goal where they said, okay, we need to change this. And for both small companies and large companies, it means a systematic viewpoint. I hate the word holistic, but it's often used. And if you've been listening, you will think, okay, so circular business model innovation and the stuff that's written here on sustainable business model, that is not really mutually exclusive, and there's definitely some overlap. And I completely agree. There is not much academic research done on that yet. But as you saw, I do action research, and we at the innovation agency I'm working with have come up with this at the moment. So it's a work in progress where we basically say, you can see, you look at this from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. And you have got product and service innovation, that is the pink stuff. And then you have got the business model innovation, which is transform the business model. And then you've got the circular ecosystem. So this is building on lots of different bits and bobs of research, but also how you can talk to businesses when it comes to circular business model innovation. And I'd like to draw your attention to two things. So you can see at the product and service level, and this is very closely aligned to design thinking, the hand Brexit stuff that came out of the Sustainable Design School in the Netherlands, specifically the university in Delft. You can have circularity and sustainability still a little bit distinct, or you can have it quite distinct at the individual product level. So in the individual product level, you can say, oh, we want to do close the loop when it comes to the material only, and we really don't care so much about what is going on at the social level. And if you obviously you listen to what I just said, so this is something where I'm quite uneasy about. So I think you always need to immediately look at the business model level, which is the very crappy pink loop I've done there, and when it comes to business innovation that is serving circularity, you always have an overlap between what sustainability and a sustainable business model means and what a circular business model means. And that, for example, also means that you're always engaging the whole of the company if you're an existing business. The whole build value networks, this is obviously something that Climate-KIC is doing from a climate change perspective as well, with lots of the larger scale projects involved through the KICs. And it is really hard to influence it unless you are very, very clued up about system thinking and leverage points and all that kind of stuff. But we are looking at the transform the business model and business model innovation. And one of the key takeaways, I'm going to remind you all or us all later about that, is really there is an overlap between circularity and sustainability when it comes to business model innovation. Now, if you think back to the 4 boxes where I had you've got value proposition, value creation, value delivery, and value capture. What is really interesting that the people who came up with all these 4 boxes and all the different thinking a couple of years ago, when it comes to testing it, chucked value creation and value delivery in one bucket, which is the middle one here, and the value proposition in another side, which is basically, does anybody want it? Does the customer want it? Is there a need for it? Who am I creating value for? And is it viable? Value capture, that's how we make money. And I think that was very clever that they did this. So it's in terms of just calling it desirability, feasibility, and viability, and really ensuring that that is tested when it comes to business model innovation. Because no doubt, also in the Climate-KIC community, I'm aware of many startups that completely focused on value delivery or the value creation and missed out, is it desirable? Is our value proposition actually desirable? Does anybody want it? And I thought it was very great that the people behind the business model canvas also thought, okay, our experimentation tools need to focus much more and make sure that they steer everybody who wants to do entrepreneurial activities into the direction of, is it desirable is really the key question. And that is also the same for circular business models, because I hope, and I'm going to redeem myself. So I'm holding up first. So I'm a Fairphone user, okay? So keep that in mind for my next slide. Right. So I really strongly think that if you stay in a niche, you can't change much as an entrepreneur. So you always want to scale, and you can only scale if you really make sure that your product, your value proposition, is desirable for people. And I had the very first version of the Fairphone, which I threw against the wall because I was such a frustrated user. But I stuck with them, and I like the point there that is made. This is obviously a screenshot from Twitter. There's a user saying, Fairphone, it is fair because you get to suffer too when you use it, not just the people in the supply chain. And it was really the case. I don't know if anybody in this audience had a Fairphone one. It was absolute hell to use, but it's much better now, because now it's actually a desirable product. So they're constantly involved, but they really pushed it out when it came to the market on the environmental credits, on the social credits. So they came, were created out of a great campaign about conflict minerals in the smartphone value chain, and thought, oh, we can do it better. We set up the business, but launched a product before they actually really got the interface right. And whenever you drop Fairphone version 1, it just disintegrated in all its individual parts, which always was a great point of laughter for my friends when they said, oh, great, it's designed for disassembly, okay, isn't it? So, which is good, but it's much better now. So I always stress that it's super important. On the left-hand side, you see what's called the lean startup. It's like a desirability testing tool when it comes to, you need to have something that you engage with your users. It doesn't have to be a fully blown pilot, but it needs to be good enough to really test your value proposition. And that is absolutely adamant also for circular business models. And I'm going to talk about now about a globally very successful circular, quite large circular startup now, who's trying to enter the German market. And this is the case study I mentioned earlier on. So we did research in Berlin in 2021 about this. And it is a company that is looking to work with existing fast-moving consumer goods. So that is, it's cosmetics, shampoo bottles. It is the loose packaged goods, such as pasta and snack bars, all that kind of stuff. And trialing two different circular business models because they wanted to introduce reusable packaging and engaging, being a third-party business that is working with the manufacturers and with the retailers and provide the consumer with an opportunity to really reduce the environmental impact and also the social impact that is created through littering and through very harsh price points when it comes to some of the packaging supply chains. And they came up, this is on paper, this was in early 2021, which this global player came up with. They said, oh, we are going to, they're not in the German market at the moment, but in Berlin, people are really keen to try new things. So we are going to try, on the left-hand side, you see an e-commerce reuse system. And on the right-hand side, we are going to try an in-store reuse system. And you can see, I'm just really quickly going through it on the left-hand side. So you have got the online, it's pretty much e-commerce. So you use your goods, be it through Amazon groceries. It's delivered to you, to your door. You use your product. It's like a plastic bottle that can have a health or food product in it. And then you use the same packaging that was delivered in and send it back to the third-party supplier. So I'm this case study business who is working with the manufacturer and with the retailers to get it refilled, and it goes back to you. So that's from the customer perspective, how you're experiencing it. The other hand is where you still go to the store, you go shopping, and it's pretty much, if you have ever been to Germany, it's got a really established deposit reuse system in place, especially for drinks, where you have got whole take-back automatic containers in most supermarkets, where you get a little bit of money back if you provide an empty. That was for this particular startup, which is completely branded as circular startup, by the way, hailing from the US. That was the reason why they also used Berlin and Germany, not only because Berlin has got a really young, vibrant, innovative potential customer base, but also you've got an existing acceptance of a reuse system, especially for drinks bottles. And what they found, so they said, we need to engage with the desirability first. And you can see, so what we classed here, so this is something I work with Nancy and Alisa, was you can see that the consumers, so this is based on interviews with the consumers and on actual behavior data from the customers who use these pilot options. It's all great, positive environmental impact, high quality, low prices, is all fantastic. But there were still concerns about the negative environmental impact. So they didn't quite buy it, how it was communicated, especially there was a lot of carbon impact from the transport. Then there was also, nobody actually bought the argument it was low prices. So there were actually just perceptions that it's more expensive, inconvenience, limited product variety. And in the in-store, it's deposit refund system, what DRS stands for. It's got very similar concerns. So there's a lot of, this is great from an environmental perspective, but there's definitely a lot of barrier there. And these findings, so when it comes to the testing of the desirability of this circular business model, these findings, so neither of these went ahead. So they didn't actually introduce either of these two models. And what is interesting, when we published this in January this year, and we thought, we asked the company, can we not have you anonymous, because it's good findings, it's very useful for others. And they said, we have evolved so much and we really want to scale, that we rather not really want to be associated with this anymore. So they have completely adapted based on the learning that they derived from the desirability testing with the consumers. And I think this is so interesting, because there is a really high environmental benefit and the consumer sees it. And there is definitely, from streamlined life cycle analysis, when it comes to the benefit, it is definitely there, but the barriers were still so high that it's not enough to see this as a scalable solution. And what we found, they had absolute clarity on who they need to test with in order to test the desirability, viability, and feasibility. And feasibility, they absolutely had nailed already last year, but the desirability aspect was really, really not satisfactory in order to allow for scalability of the solution, not only in Berlin, but across Germany. And the viability aspect was also pretty much there, but I think this is really useful as a key takeaway. So this case study company knew exactly what is it in our elements when it comes to the circularity practices, which we need to cover and who we need to cover it with. And I am aware that on this slide, it's this could apply to anything. It wouldn't need to be a circular business model or a sustainable business model, but they had absolute clarity on the circularity practices that were underpinning. So there is a different layer to this. When it comes to operation efficiency, when it comes to consumer participation, when it comes to retail and brand partnerships. So in terms of, there were very clear parameters, we would work with these guys, we would not work with these guys because they don't align with certain circularity principles that we set ourselves strategically. And because you always have the strategic decision before you even implement the business model. So key takeaways. There is going to be an overlap of sustainability and circularity at the business model level. And that means, knowing clarity on what it is, either on the circular practices, if you're just starting to set up your business, or the goal of the shift of goal, if you're a large business, or both, is really important. And I would like to push you to always aim for scaling, because going right at the beginning for a niche market without having the ambition to have a scalable business model only works if you're going for really high-end products. So you're really a luxury good provider, which is not sustainable when it comes to a social equity and viability perspective when it comes to the business model. And just to be really clear, the last one, at the moment in March this year, we don't have enough environmental policies and laws in place within Europe that the consumer has to change And you saw from the case study company that showed was the e-commerce and was the in-store reuse model in the fast-moving consumer goods sector. The barriers are still that require is mainly behavior change, and unless there are policy in place, you have to test the desirability. You really have to get your head around that. And I'm going to end with a nice uplifting Climate-KIC example. So these guys, I don't know if you know them. They used to. I showed that Vanessa at the beginning. I was roaming this afternoon through my old Climate-KIC materials, and this is a flyer of 30 Climate-KIC startups from 2014. And these guys went there, and they called themselves All, a liquid blob. And it's in algae. It was round in algae see-through blob that was filled with liquid. And they were also based at Imperial College, and I sampled quite a few of them. So they, at the beginning, they targeted like marathon runners to give them out on the roadside. And it's an interesting experience to take one in your mouth and then just it explodes in your mouth and you eat it afterwards as well. It's interesting. What's also interesting, if you've read The Circle by Dave Eggers, and his follow-on book is actually talking about this as a way, which is a use on the campus of this large technology company, which made me smile, but that is a diversion. So that was 2014. They were called Aho, and now they are made from Notpla. And you can see A on the top inside, that little hand holding it. So it's not a round big globe anymore. It's now a more of a square package, which is obviously good because you can hold it better. You can also have it nicer in your mouth, and it's easier to transport and all that kind of stuff. But I also do edible packaging, biodegradable packaging for both cosmetics and restaurants. And what is really interesting, it is obviously a deeply circular business model, because if you think back to the, for example, the cradle to cradle concept, if you have that biological cycle, so this is all about, you have got nothing at the end after you use a product as a consumer that is lost. You've got nutrition of some kind. You don't have anything that is contributing to littering. You have got no value lost, no value destroyed. So the packaging that you're giving out into the world. And they don't talk about circularity on the website at all, but it is a very clear circular business, which is interesting, but they've got that really clear narrative. So if you think about back to the first key takeaway, just be really clear on what you are trying to do. And yeah, in December, 4 months ago, they had their Series A funding with £10 million, which is great. And hopefully that will allow them to get even bigger and have an even larger impact. And I think they're a great example of how constantly adapting and changing has allowed to broaden up the product range, find different customers, seeing what is the desirability for all these different customers. Because if you tried the globe back in 2014, it was like the novelty thing. We all did it to Word Imperial, or we're just like, ooh, this is kind of fun. Can't really see this working. But they managed to stick with it and figure out the desirability, and yeah, did it well. I don't know, do you know, or do you all know Notpla? Is this all completely old hat to you? Okay, good. Phew. So yeah, thank you for the discussion. I know this was basic, low level entry.
Thank you very much, Ivka. I will stop now the recording.